the board of directors, the staff, and our great volunteers, I'd like to welcome you to our annual Memorial Day Observance at the Wall to honor and remember those veterans who we have lost and have served our country. I just have to say, we're back.
Amen.
We're back. We're thrilled to be back here at the Wall in person today after more than a year of only virtual ceremonies. And I know things look a little different. Those of you that have been to our ceremonies here before, it looks a little different. Most things are back to normal, but not quite everything. Our co-hosts, the National Park Service, they don't have all of their staff back on a permanent basis yet. And so we don't have as big a stage and some of the pomp and circumstance that we normally would have. But it really doesn't matter because our commitment to be back here in person and to honor our Vietnam veterans and all of our nation's veterans on Memorial Day is greater than ever. So welcome. When we first began planning for an in-person ceremony this year, the restrictions only allowed for 50 people for an outdoor event. And I told the superintendent of the park that if we could only have 50 people, I would be here with 49 Vietnam veterans standing on the grass. Thankfully, most of the restrictions have been lifted, and I know we're all looking forward to really getting back to normal. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize some of our guests here today. First, welcome home to all of our Vietnam veterans, to this place that our nation has set aside for you. Welcome to all of our Gold Star family members. And welcome to all of those watching on our website and on the VDMF Facebook page. These are the places you've become accustomed to watching our ceremonies over the past year. And I'd like to welcome all the folks in town for Rolling to Remember, here to bring awareness and accountability for our prisoners of war and those missing in action. This has been such a tragic year for us all. Almost 600,000 Americans have died from the pandemic. Vietnam veterans and some close to our own VDMF and Wall family have died from the pandemic and from other causes. They're not here with us today. Longtime VDMF chairman of the board, John Dibble, passed away in March on Vietnam Veterans Day. And just last week, Senator John Warner died at the age of 94. Both of those men spoke on this very spot. After spearheading the legislation that authorized the construction of a national Vietnam memorial here on the National Mall, Senator Warner was the keynote speaker in 1982 for our dedication. And John Dibble helped lead our organization for the past 20 years as we continue to care for the memorial and conduct programs like this ceremony. We also lost 4 of our Yellow Hat National Park Service volunteers. There are many of them here today, and some of them were not. They really are the face of this memorial to about 5 million people every year. And I know the superintendent of the park will speak more about them. Now, to begin our ceremony, I'd like to introduce our chaplain to provide today's invocation. He delivered the closing benediction during the dedication ceremony right here in 1982, and I am honored to call him a friend. Please welcome Rabbi Arnie Resnikoff.
Let us pray. O Lord our God and God of generations past, you commanded us, remember, pass on stories of the past, but also recall, retell dreams and promises of future better times. And so on this Memorial Day, at this memorial wall, I remember and I pray. I pray to mourn, remember, honor all lives lost in our armed forces some have lost their faith in faith. For them I ask they join me at least to dream, to reaffirm we have a dream, that we can make a difference, that we can still change the world. Dream with me that those we honor on this day will never be forgotten, but we will build a future when we need not dig new military graves, and no new names need be inscribed on memorials of war. A time we beat our swords to plowshares, and war will be no more. After Vietnam, we built this wall to heal a nation torn apart by grief and war. Heal us again, I pray. Give us courage, strength, and wisdom to keep today's divisions from tearing us apart. And when we pray, let our lives become our prayers, praying with our bodies, praying with our legs, standing up for what is right, for equality, humanity, justice, for righteousness in what we do and say. Today, to honor those who sacrificed their lives, let us embrace old patriotic words, the Liberty Song that once inspired founders of our nation, and now must touch our hearts, inspire us again. Join hand in hand, brave Americans all. By uniting we stand, by dividing we fall. I pray we can unite and stand. I dream we can unite and stand. And united through our words, our actions, and our dreams, proclaim liberty throughout the land. And may we say, Amen.
Amen. Wonderful. Oh, that's excellent.
Thank you very much. Now, please welcome the Joint Armed Forces Color Guard from the Military District of Washington for the presentation of the colors. Please stand as you are able and remain standing until the colors have departed. Color Guard, present the colors. We'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by John Rowan, National President of the Vietnam Veterans of America, followed by the national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to acknowledge a few more of our special guests today. We're pleased to have some distinguished active duty service members with us to escort our named addition families to the wall later in the program. Welcome to Brigadier General Michael Eastman, the Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Brinson, the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Troy Black, Command Sergeant Major Franklin Velez, and Mastery Gunnery Sergeant Jorge Aspiazo. Thank you all for joining us here today, being a part of our ceremony. Each year, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund holds a ceremony in partnership with the National Park Service. Please welcome Jeff Reinbold, Superintendent of the National Mall and Memorial Parks.
Good afternoon. Veterans, families, honored guests, on behalf of the National Park Service, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which was conceived and built on behalf of a grateful nation to honor and recognize the more than 2.7 million American men and women who served in the conflict. Not since the Veterans Day Observance in 2019, more than a year and a half ago, have we been able to join together at this memorial in person to honor those who served and to mourn those we lost in the Vietnam War. We're incredibly grateful to be here today. However, as Jim mentioned, just because we haven't been here in person on important dates of remembrance like Memorial Day and Veterans Day doesn't mean that the men and women we honor were forgotten. Our partner at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund made sure that even when we couldn't gather together, there were virtual observances and online commemorations. My sincere thanks to BVMF President and CEO Jim Knotts and to his tireless staff for their efforts over the last 15 months to ensure that even during a pandemic, Vietnam veterans and the families of those who served and sacrificed were remembered. I'd like to offer a heartfelt welcome to the veterans and their families who are here with us today. Welcome to your Vietnam Veterans Memorial. We are humbled that you've chosen to spend part of your Memorial Day here with us. And I would like to extend a very special welcome back to our yellow-clad volunteers who provide invaluable assistance in the care and interpretation of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. They are returning to the National Mall sites this week for the first time since the pandemic started. I know how much this memorial means to all of you and how hard it was for you to be away. I appreciate your patience over the last 15 months. We are thrilled to have you back. I would also like to take a few moments to remember several members of our volunteer corps who passed away since we last gathered. Greg Chase, Bill Harris, Rick Huckstep, and Paul Stancliffe, whose work with us epitomized what Memorial Day and Remembrance is all about. And I would like to say a few words about each of them. Never seen without a smile, according to his fellow volunteers, Paul Stancliffe was a Navy veteran of the Vietnam War. He started volunteering at the Wall in 1982, serving for nearly 3 decades before his death in January. His wife Cindy is likewise a lifelong volunteer. In fact, they met at the Wall before marrying in 1999. Paul made thousands of keychains over the years with the Vietnam service ribbon colors and gave them away to visitors and to veterans. Bill Harris was another longtime volunteer with over 20 years of volunteer work at the memorial. a veteran of the 173rd Airborne in Vietnam. Bill's colleagues at the wall remember his big booming voice and his big heart. He could be seen regularly giving tours of the mall, often to schoolgirls. And then he branched out, giving tours on a plane. He loved giving programs to visitors, and his wall talks are remembered fondly as high theater. Rick Huxley was another Vietnam vet, having served as a Navy Seabee. Rick volunteered on Sunday mornings and was almost always the first volunteer at the memorial on those days. He was a quiet, dedicated volunteer who treated visitors like family. There is a wonderful photo of Rick with his daughter and granddaughter in front of the wall. You can see how proud he was of them and they of him. Greg Chase was one of our long-distance volunteers, traveling from his home in California several times a year to volunteer at the memorial. Greg spent his career with the California Highway Patrol and also served for years as an officer in the Civil Air Patrol. A lifetime of service. Though not a Vietnam veteran himself, Greg had a special connection to the wall. His brother Fred Chase was killed in Vietnam. His name is on 39 West panel, making Greg a Gold Star brother. The dedication of these volunteers and the service they provide to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and its visitors reminds me of some words I recently came across from Jennifer Granholm, who was governor of Michigan at the time, currently serves as the U.S. Secretary of Energy. Ceremonies are important, she said, but our gratitude has to be more than visits to the troops and once-a-year Memorial Day services. We honor the dead best by treating the living well. Greg, Rick, Bill, and Paul were the embodiment of this sentiment, as are their fellow volunteers. They honor the 58,281 names on the wall, not just on Memorial Day, but each and every day of the year. They and our National Park Service staff are ambassadors to more than 4 million annual visitors, offering a warm greeting, keen insight and knowledge, a sympathetic ear, and words of comfort for the grieving. Their dedication will provide a bit of inspiration for all of us throughout the year. And they remind us to honor those who sacrifice so much by taking care of ourselves and each other.
Thank you, Superintendent Reingold, and thanks to our partners at the National Park Service. This month marked the 46 years since the last American casualties in the Vietnam War. Yet for some families, those years did not bring closure as they waited for their families and their friends. I call your attention to our empty chair here as a symbol of the 1,584 Americans who still remain missing or unaccounted for from the Vietnam War. Yet, in remembering them, we must all recognize that we shall not rest until there is the fullest possible accounting of those who remain missing from the Vietnam War. Now I would like to ask our name addition families and their escorts to start making their way to the wall.
Thank you.
We have made it our tradition that during our Memorial Day ceremony, we have the first reading of the names of those added to the memorial and those repatriated. Since we were unable to do so last year, today we will read the names for the first time of the 5 men added and the 5 repatriated in 2020 and 2021. With these additions, the total number of honored on the wall is now 58,281. As you are able, please stand as I will now read the names of the service members that have been added to the wall. Lawrence R. Olivero. Michael C. Black. Andrew J. Smith. Larry R. Tenden. Frederick M. Zimak. Please remain standing as I will now read the names of the service members who have been repatriated. Paul A. Abilene. Raul A. Young. Roy A. Knight, Jr. Alva R. Rogan. Neil C. Ward. I'm sure all of you will join me as I say, welcome home. Please be seated. It is my pleasure to introduce Nancy Wilson, who will speak on behalf of the Vietnam Women's Memorial. Nancy was a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy Nurse Corps from 1964 to 1969. From February 1968 to February 1969, she served on the USS Repose, assigned to the I-4 area. She was one of 29 nurses with as many as 1,000 patients on board. Following active duty, Nancy became a family nurse practitioner. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Nancy Wilson.
Thank you.
Everybody, welcome home. Being selected to represent the 11,000 military women who volunteered to serve in Vietnam is a profound honor for me. The majority of women serving in Vietnam were nurses, as I am, because that was the most critical need at the time. Women also filled roles as journalists, photographers, administrators, intelligence, and air traffic control. The titles and ranks may have differed, but all were military women serving during the Vietnam War. The impact of the war was felt by everyone, regardless of when they served. Names of 8 women are etched on the Vietnam Wall. 1956 was the year the first Army Nurse Corps arrived in Vietnam, and they were charged with teaching nursing skills to Vietnamese in far southern Vietnam. It was not until the 1960s that the female military increased in significant numbers. Several thousand civilians, primarily females, also worked in country during the war with multiple charitable organizations, including, but not limited to, the USO, Catholic Relief, Peace Corps, and the the Red Cross. Some of these individuals were assigned to work directly with the military, while even larger numbers worked with the Vietnamese in villages. The Red Cross was most closely associated with the military because of the hospitals. Being on the repose, I knew there was someone close by who could help patients contact families, etc. The Red Cross donut dollies were in country with the goal of providing a bit of home to more isolated servicemen. There were 59 civilians killed during Vietnam. The government never tabulated or documented how many military women and civilians served in Vietnam. We were unrecognized as individuals who experienced the trauma, anxiety, fear, exhaustion, and stress just as the men experienced. We were vilified when we got home and tried to hide our involvement and our feelings. The lack of documentation contributed to the decades-long delay in women being recognized as eligible for veterans benefits. Mass casualties of mutilated young men gave no time to deal with feelings, and the women buried these feelings deeper and deeper, not allowing themselves to cry. To this day, there are elements of our experiences that will never surface. I know that from my own experience, as I never talked about Vietnam or cried for over 20 years after I got home. The Veterans Administration has carried out research studies about problems veterans experience following the war. Some of these were related to the effects of Agent Orange exposure, including multiple myeloma and prostate cancer. There is no documentation of research studies related to the effects Agent Orange had on the bodies of female veterans, including breast cancer, spine, and soft tissue problems. These women needed to know that their actions and devotion to the servicemen made a difference and were appreciated. A simple thank you would have gone a long way. Diane Carlson Evans, Captain, Army Nurse Corps, was a consistent force and momentum that resulted in the Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation. The Vietnam Women's Memorial is located 300 feet from the wall and is the healing place for all women involved. Captain Evans conceived the idea in 1983, and after a 10-year journey of multiple roadblocks, was able to secure the approval for the Vietnam Women's Memorial statue to be located on the wall. The Vietnam Women's Memorial is supported by hundreds of Americans who were committed to this project by sharing their time and talents as needed. Rear Admiral Francis Shea Buckley, retired, was one of these important voices. I knew Fran as a shipmate. She was on the repose. She was in charge of the operating room, which was going usually 24 hours a day. I knew Rear Admiral Buckley served on the jury that made the final selection of the statue designed and created by Glenna Gooding. There are 4 individuals in the statue. 3 were all touching each other. The nurse holding the wounded soldier, the nurse watching for income. The 4th figure is kneeling behind, holding an empty helmet, and is believed to represent the civilians who were present. The women finally had a place where they could feel support and experience healing. Now, all of the world, through this memorial, will be able to recognize the sacrifices made by the women involved in the Vietnam conflict. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thanks to the service of all of our women who served in the Vietnam War, both those in uniform and those in civilian clothes. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Karl Marlantes. Karl is the best-selling author of Matterhorn, What It's Like to Go to War, and Deep Rhodes. He graduated from Yale University and was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, but left after one semester to join active duty in the U.S. Marine Corps as an infantry officer. He served with the 1st Battalion, 4th Marines from October 1968 to October 1969 and was awarded the Navy Cross for action in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Karl Marlantes.
I'm so short, I gotta lay sideways to cast a shadow. I'm so short, I gotta have a step ladder to tie my shoes. I'm so short, I gotta stand on my helmet to piss. We're all short timers, we're positive short timers. In the next couple of decades, most of Vietnam veterans are going to rotate home for the final time. And the last thing that I want to do is go to my grave wondering what it was all about. What was the meaning? 58,200 plus names on the wall. An additional 2 million of our allies and our enemies, and civilians that were caught in the game. Why? What? And I searched for a long time for meaning. And what I came to understand is that you don't find meaning, you make it. And everybody here will make meaning out of these losses and that war in their own unique way. It might be different from everybody else, but that's the way it has to be done, because there's no universal meaning that I've found. But what I thought I would do today is I'm just going to share the meaning that I made out of my war experience. I'm going to start about war in general, and then we're going to get a little more personal. I'm not a pacifist. I know a lot of people came back from that war saying never again, no. I'm a Marine and I don't want too many Marine pacifists. I'm not anti-war, but I am anti-stupid. I saw a bumper sticker once. The bumper sticker said, "Did you ever wonder if the meaning of your whole life was simply to serve as a warning to others?" I've kind of thought about the Vietnam War in that way. We've gotten involved in a lot of dumb stuff during Vietnam and after Vietnam. We've got kids acting like police in places you have to go to Google Maps to figure out where it is. We've got police acting like paratroopers and Marines. We've got to start thinking about this. What's the meaning in a stupid war? There is none. But we can make meaning out of it by not doing it anymore. You remember in the 80s, there was something called Vietnam Syndrome. That was something that was bad. I'm afraid I'd like to see it come back. Colin Powell, who served in Vietnam, had 8 questions that had to be answered before we went to war. Do the American people back it? Is there an exit strategy? Is there a military objective? Can we obtain it? These are important questions, and I think we have to remember them the next time we choose to put our children at risk or to kill other people. Now, I'm not as I said, against war. But I'm rabid about going to the war to absolutely defend what I consider to be American values. That's worth risking your life for. And notice I said risking your life. Everybody here on this wall chose to risk their lives. Their lives were sacrificed because of bravery and bad luck. You veterans know. You're in the wrong hole when the shell comes in, that's it. But everybody on this wall risked their lives, and that was the important act. And many, many people in the armed forces risked their lives by putting their signature on the line. And if the orders God have them doing support work, by God, that's what they are doing, and we need them. And they have to be remembered. I sort of had this image of, here you are, the company commander comes up to PFC Marlantes and he says, Marlantes, we're sending you on a suicide mission. Well, yep, I'm sorry to say that you won't be coming back because you're going to be dying for American values. Wait a second. I'm not sure about this. Risking your life, though, is very different. And that's the key thing. What is worth risking your life for? What is worth, let's face it, killing other people for? They're in our founding documents. It is not that hard. Rule of law, the right habeas corpus, trial by jury. Nobody is above the law. There are many, many governments that don't want to do this, and they should be fought, especially if they try to do it to us. Thomas Jefferson wrote Life, Liberty, and he wrote The Pursuit of Happiness. He didn't mean that feeling you get when Daddy buys you a new car. All right? That's happiness. I wouldn't risk my life over that. In the late 18th century, when Jefferson was writing, happiness meant something different than it means today. It meant thriving and fulfillment. And it's too bad that we can't translate that original document to today's language. But I would definitely risk my life if there was any government that tried to stop me from reaching my human potential. And that's what Jefferson was talking about. And then Abraham Lincoln summed it up. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. If we're not fighting for these things, we need to think again. And that's the meaning of a war that we didn't quite get it all lined up, in my opinion. And some of you may disagree with me, but I ain't running for office. I want a steely-eyed patriotism. I don't want a sentimental patriotism. Most of these people are looking down on us, and they don't want us to sort of, be singing about bombs bursting in air without thinking about it. I love that song. I love it. But I know what bombs bursting in air does to human flesh. And so when I hear those words, I have a thought in my mind about how serious this is. And I want our patriotism to be steely-eyed and flinty and serious. It's not about fireworks. Now I'm going to get a little more personal. When I was writing Matterhorn and What It's Like to Go to War, I have a friend, his name is Joe Bobro, sort of a Zen monk. And he said to me, he says, Karl, what you're doing is you're turning your ghosts into ancestors. What he meant by that is ghosts haunt you. Ghosts are the things you stuff inside. Like Nancy was saying, don't talk about it. 20 years, not even telling me, stuff it. Well, that's the ghost that's going to get you into drinking, bar fights, divorces, despair, and yes, suicide. What we did in Vietnam, what's been done in Iraq and Afghanistan, these people, us, we've done that. They're part of us. But they can't be ghosts. I'm never going to get rid of them. I'm never going to be able to change the fact that I killed a lot of people, that I made a lot of mistakes, but I can get them out here in front of me where it doesn't haunt me. So I won't end up doing some of those crazy things that we all know happen. My two examples are simple. I got my ghost-turned ancestors through art. The first one was when I came home, and I've told this story before. I was so fresh out of the jungle, that jungle rock, in my uniform. I was at an annex to the Pentagon, and I had to take some papers to the White House. And I'm in my uniform heading down, I think it was M Street. And across the street were a bunch of students shouting obscenities at me, flipping me the bird, waving North Vietnamese and Viet Cong flags. And I'm on the other side of the street, and they're shouting baby killer. And I'm thinking to myself two things. One is, the people you're calling baby killers are probably 3 or 4 years younger than you are. The only reason that you're on that side of the street and they're not is that they didn't get to go to college. I wanted to walk across the street and talk to those people. But can you imagine, Marine in uniform, got the headlines of the Washington Post, Marine attacks peaceful protesters. I couldn't do it. I was stuck. I couldn't reach across the street. That ghost haunted me, and then I wrote Matterhorn. That's our story. That's our story. That's the story of a 19-year-old trying to grow up in a very tough spot. The other personal turning of a ghost into an ancestor was I killed a kid right up front and personal. That's not usual. All of you veterans know it's usually at a distance. And usually you kill a goot or a trout or a cowhead or a haji because the reason you're doing that is you can't kill another human being. It's just not in your bones. You get the job done. But this particular instance, I had been knocked out by a hanger. In fact, that was what put me on the repose. I followed Nancy twice now. She left the repose a week before I got there. And I'm here today. I was crawling around to the side of this kid who was throwing hand grenades at us. And I was probably closer to him than the front row here. And I was laying on the ground with my M16 right on him, and he turned and looked at me with a hand grenade in his hand, one of those chai bombs, or potato mashers. And we locked eyes. Now that was not going. And I remember I was whispering, I can't speak Vietnamese. I said, don't throw it, I won't pull the trigger. Just don't throw it, I won't pull the trigger. He snarled at me and threw the grenade. That's how I ended up seeing Nancy. And Nancy's comrade. And I pulled the trigger and I killed him. About 20 years later, in the early 1990s, I'm driving down Interstate 5. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I've got country music on the radio. All the kids are back home. It's quiet. 5 kids. And those eyes appeared in the windshield of the car. Now, I wasn't sophisticated enough then to know about something called a flashback. But I was sophisticated enough to know there was a ghost. Not one that was out there outside someplace. But I knew it was a ghost that was inside someplace. I had to deal with it. And that's what it was like to go to war on. I got that stuff out. It wasn't easy, but I got it out in front of me. And what's important about that is not the particular act that you make to get your ghost turned into an ancestor. It's that you get it out and you get it in front of you, and there are lots of ways of doing it. You can start by talking to your spouse. Just talking about it gets it out in front of you. You can do things like join Team Rubicon and use your skills. You can fight forest fires. I know some of us are getting too old for that, so we can serve coffee. I mean, we go organizational things out in the field that are of a help, and you can take those things and turn them into something. That's how you start to make meaning. You just don't wait to find it. Save a warrior. Veterans groups. The important thing about all that is it's easy to talk to other veterans. It's not so easy to talk to non-veterans because, hey, they may not quite understand. I mean, I'll say it openly. I got a thrill out of killing people. Oh, I don't want to hear that. But that was part of me, definitely. And if I hide that, how can I ever join the community if I always am hiding who I am? So the important thing is you've got to get it out and be in front of non-veterans, because you can't get back in the community unless you do it. Getting back in community is what's so important for healing and for health. We're not solitary animals. Now there's other ghosts. These are the ghosts of guys I knew right behind me here. Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, was there about 2 years. And we had 81 killed. 81 Charlie Company members were on this wall. I don't find any meaning in their deaths. That happened 50 years ago. Meaning has to be now. And meaning is up to me to make meaning out of these deaths. And it's up to you to make meaning out of those that you know. I woke up one morning, maybe 15 years ago, and I realized that I spent my whole life trying to race the clock. And it occurred to me that that was the wrong metaphor for life. Life isn't about a race between individuals. We can be fooled into thinking it is not. Life is a relay. We're in a relay race. And there are batons that are handed to us, and we carry them, and we're going to hand them on. That's what we're here for, to run that relay. These guys here have already passed their batons. Are we going to drop them? If we drop them, then their lives are lost in vain. There's no meaning there. Meaning's here, in action. And I want to pick up my baton and make sure I carry it. I've dropped it several times, more than once. But I want to try to keep that baton in my hand. And I'm going to tell you a couple of those batons. Cliff Breuers. Cliff, 20-year-old squad leader, was killed on Hill 400, which was a hill we had to take before we took Hill 484. And we abandoned Hill 484 3 times. Where's the meaning in that? There isn't. But what this 20-year-old squad leader could do is get his squad to do really tough things and do them well. And he died taking out a machine gun that was the objective of his squad. And what baton did he pass to me? Doing tough things first and doing them yourself before you ask other people to do it. He died doing that. And if I let that die with him, then the meeting goes down the cliff. I don't want to do that. Antonas Krzyzgintas, 2nd lieutenant. His mom had him, delivered him, fleeing from the Red Army in Lithuania. Krzyzgintas hated communists, I mean with a passion. They took his country, they took his home. He joined the Marines to fight communism. And he died leading the Marine platoon. Hatred's not something that I want to carry, not of people. He hated totalitarianism. He hated it with a passion. And I think that I want to do that myself. That's the baton I carry for the Zimkas. Charles Thomas, he was my radio operator. 18, wise beyond his years. When I first got there, done 2nd lieutenant, inexperienced, and I'd start to come up with some cockamamie order, and this kid standing next to me sort of lean in like this. Thomas, what is it? You know? I go like, what? And he'd say, well, maybe if you did it this way, it might be a little better. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know how many lies he saved by stopping me when I was brand new, and that made me dumb to see. He had a relationship with authority he wasn't afraid of. But he was able to work. He could manage me quite well. Managing up 18 years old. I made him a squad leader. And he died fulfilling my orders, trying to carry out a squad mission. But what's his baton? 18-year-old squad leader, 12 Marines, life and death decision. I mean, most 18-year-olds are scared if they have to put on the junior prom. This kid was doing that at 18 and he died when he was 18 doing that. Correct relationship with authority. When to buck it, when to use it. There's another even more personal thing about Thomas. We were way up in the mountains and it was cold. It was cold in Vietnam, yes, it was cold. We didn't have any jackets. We just slept in our utility shirts and we had ponchos on. And I got hypothermia. It was bad. I mean, it was bad. I couldn't talk. I was chattering so much and I was shaking so much. And I started to get loopy. And Thomas knew what hypothermia was. He grabbed me and he took me to the ground and he wrapped me up with his arms and hugged me and wrapped me in his poncho line or poncho and stayed with me until I stopped shaking. The baton I carry from Thomas is my own life. I can get real emotional here. And I know a lot of you have a very similar experience. Think about the batons that were given to you. Stanley Earl, 19. You're on an assault, and I come up on Stanley, and he's shaking and quivering, he's frightened to death. And he can't seek the magazine in his M16 because his hands are shaking too much. And so I took his M16 and jammed the magazine in there and pulled the receiver back and rolled it around. I said, there you go. And he looked at me and he's still shivering and quaking. He went up the hill to take out 2 positions of automatic weapons and died doing it. The baton is commitment to doing even when you're shaking with fear. That ain't an easy baton to carry, but that is so necessary for this society. George Jamea, we called him Canada. He was born in Osoyoos, British Columbia. And he came south to join the Marines. And he was, some of you read Matterhorn, he is the inspiration for Vancouver. He's Vancouver's most real character in that novel. I mean, George Jamea, Canada, was bigger than life. He looked like Errol Flynn. He was about 6'4". Jungle weight was probably about 200. And he was savvy. He never risked anybody's life. He was badly wounded on Hill 484. He was in a shell hole, bleeding. The Corbett had stuck IV tubes into his arm. There was a bottle. I don't know how they got it stuck up. And his squad was pinned down by a machine gun. He heard that they were pinned down and no one could reach them. He yanked the IV tubes out of that bottle, grabbed an M16, and went running up the hill and attacked that machine gun with the IV tubes, dragging it out of his arm. He'd already lost a lot of blood, got hit a couple more times and died, took out the machine gun and saved his squad. There are 4 people who wear silver bracelets with his name on them because the baton that he passed to them was their own lives. Was the baton for me the warrior ideal? Savvy, skilled, courageous, full of love for his comrades. We had 2 Canadians killed in Charlottesville. Many Canadians volunteered, many died, and I think on Memorial Day we have to remember our brothers up there. Now, there's no meaning to be found for their deaths, but those batons don't die. If I can carry those batons with some humility and not drop them and pass them on to somebody who's a good runner before I go, then these names, these deaths have enormous meaning. Now, like many of you, like Nancy said, when I came back, I didn't, find anybody throwing garlands around my neck and hugging me, kissing me, and I didn't get a ticker tape parade down Wall Street. It just wasn't like that. So what did I do? Same thing. I hid. I grew my hair long. I didn't wear beads. I didn't grow my hair long. Tried to fit in. Wouldn't tell anybody that I served. I wouldn't put it on my resume because I was afraid it would not get me the job. That was how seriously bad it was for returning Vietnam veterans. And then one day, I got ashamed of hiding. I started to turn that ghost into an ancestor. My God, I'm going to go find those medals of mine, right? I stuffed them away. I was actually, honest to God, in a plastic peanut butter jar in the back of the closet. And my father, World War II veteran, landed at Utah Beach, fought through the Bakosh, fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He got one of those shadow boxes. He and I took my medals and we put them in that shadow box and I put them on the wall in the living room. About 3 years after Matterhorn was published, I was invited to my high school. Gave my speech. And a high school girl stands up. Out of the mouth of babes and suckling, she says, "Knowing what you know now, would you do it again?" Well, I had to take a deep breath. I'd never been asked that. I never even thought about it before. And I know the war had a tenuous relationship to those values that I just talked about. And I know if I was to do it again, I'd have to take the chances that I wouldn't come back. That's kind of scary. Would I do it again? I had to think about it. And my answer to her was yes. I would do it again because those ancestors I carry from that war are part of me. And I like who I am. And if I had to not do it again, I wouldn't be me. And all of us are us because of this experience and because of these deaths. I'm proud to carry this baton. And I'm proud to be a Vietnam veteran. So I'm going to just leave you with one final thought, somewhat modified from the way we used to say it. I'm so short that what you're seeing and hearing now is a video recording.
I've met a lot of Vietnam veterans, and hearing Karl speak about the ancestors he still carries and the batons that have been passed to him, I'm reminded, I'm not a Vietnam veteran. I lead the Memorial Fund, but I'm not a Vietnam veteran. I'm a Desert Storm veteran. And part of the reason I'm here is because I picked up the baton this past week. All of us that served in uniform after the Vietnam War, we picked up that baton. It was handed to us by those who served before. And many of us, like me, who have left the military, that baton has been passed to an even younger generation. That's part of the legacy we all share as veterans. And I think that's something we can all be proud of. It's particularly meaningful to me because, I was raised to believe that the way many of our Vietnam veterans were treated when they came home was wrong. That they did not get the recognition, the honor, the respect that they deserve for serving their country. And when I went to war for my country, I could not have had a more different experience. We could not have asked for more support and respect while we were putting ourselves in harm's way on behalf of our country. And I come to realize that that was because of many of you here today, the Vietnam veterans. When you came back home, made a commitment that you would never let our country send another generation of men and women into harm's way without the proper respect and support that they deserve. That's how I see the baton that you handed to me and to future generations. And that is part of your legacy. And I think more than victories on the battlefield, helping our country realize that we should always honor our warriors, regardless of our feelings about any particular war. That is something to be proud of. And that is an amazing legacy, and it's something I think you all for. And Ms. Karl pointed to the wall behind me a number of times. I also am serving in this role today because there is another baton that is passed to me as part of that younger generation. And that is to honor and to remember, to never forget. The service and sacrifice of the names on this wall, all of our Vietnam veterans who served, came home. As many of our Vietnam veterans passed, it is up to us, those who come after them, to pick up that baton, to remember and to honor. Otherwise, these names fall to history. It is only as we remember them, with ceremonies like this, with our replica wall that travels around the country, with education and outreach to our younger folks to understand maybe about the Vietnam War, but more importantly about the service of our Vietnam veterans. That's how we make sure that their legacy is never forgotten. And that is also at the time that I know our amazing staff, Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund carries. It's also at the time of the men and women, the children, the grandchildren, the nieces and nephews of our Vietnam veterans still carry. Many more of them are picking up that baton, and they're coming to our reading of the name ceremony we have every 5 years to remember their loved ones. They come to the wall for events like this. The next generation is picking up that baton so that the legacy, the names on this wall, and all who served in Vietnam are not forgotten. If I could ask all of those who are laying wreaths today, please come forward. While our wreath bearers get into position, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge more of the folks in our audience today. I'd like to give my personal thanks to all of our Yellow Hat volunteers who do so much to honor and remember our veterans every day. Some are wearing yellow shirts, yellow hats, the National Park Service volunteers. And also to the staff of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund for all their work all year long. Finally, I want to thank a small army of VDMF volunteers around the country who've been working for more than a decade to find the photos of those listed on this wall for our online wall of faces. These volunteers span the country from Florida to Hawaii and many places in between. Of the 58,281 people listed on the wall, and through the dedication and diligence of these volunteers, we now have less than 60 to go to have at least one photo for every name on the wall. Now, allow me to direct your attention to the representatives of several of our nation's leading veteran service organizations as they join us in laying wreaths in honor of the fallen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome bagpiper Chris Jackson, who will be playing Amazing Grace. National Park Service. Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. The Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation. Gold Star Wives of America. American Gold Star Mothers. Vietnam Veterans Memorial Volunteers. Sons and Daughters in Touch. Paralyzed Veterans of America. Vietnam Veterans of America. Military Order of the Purple Heart. Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 227. Jewish War Veterans of the USA. Verizon Veterans Advisory Board. Redcatcher 199th Light Infantry Brigade Association. The Army OCS Alumni Association. The American Legion. In closing, let me encourage each of you to reach out and thank our veterans and their families, not just on Memorial Day, but every day of the year. Thank you all for coming. Our ceremony concludes with the playing of caps by Staff Sergeant Robert Bonner of the U.S. Marine Corps Band. Please stand. Thank you all for coming and for joining us online.
They're making fun of you right now. Fuck you.
I didn't have anything to do with the advisory board. Well, I'm gonna put the 101st person.
Here. Do you remember Miriam?
Got him on the shoulder.
Do you know what panel you're taking?
If you guys want to go ahead and go, I'll get a taxi and go back. I was the one on good.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks. Oh, okay. Well, I'm endorsing it for New Army Museum, so I'm bringing the guys out. Back. Give me a couple back and do that. I don't know. Yeah. Thanks. That was one of the most fabulous speeches I've ever heard by Mr. Karl Marlantes. Got right to the point, what every soldier, sailor, marine, Coast Guardsman ever felt. You gotta get in the mix, you gotta feel what they felt, and pass it on. So thank you everybody for being here. 2021, 53 years ago for me, come home after losing so many people, especially on that panel over there, 46 West, to friendly fire incident. 13 of my paratrooper buddies were killed in a flash. sad day. 22 mothers were murdered. Thank you for them. God bless America. And welcome home, brothers.
Any good at it? I'm going to the World Vegas Cup. She's short and she's in a white sweater. She help her to read. And then I mean, I need to go to here like 10 kisses.